Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be taking a look at a couple of option parts sets. Now, these are interesting, and if you guys are wondering why I recently suddenly did a review of the Full Mechanics Gundam Aerial long after the kit came out, this is why, because one of these part sets is for the Full Mechanics Aerial. The three we're going to be taking a look at here today, one is for the Master Grade Zeta Ver.Ka, one's for the Full Mechanics Gundam Aerial, and one's for the HG Gundam Aerial. So we'll take a look at all three of these part sets. Each one, as you can see, very simple packaging. We just have some simple instructions inside. There's a single runner in that one, a couple small little runners in that one, a couple small little runners in that one. Basically, what these will do, this one here, for example, for the Master Grade Zeta Gundam Ver.Ka, the main thing that this is going to do is change the proportions of the chest. If you guys remember, with the Master Grade Zeta Ver.Ka, some people liked it, some people didn't, but there was some discrepancy in terms of what people really liked about the chest parts of that, in terms of the chest being rather flat on the MG Zeta Ver.Ka. So what this does is just give us some option parts here, and as you can see, we just have a few pieces here in gray and a few pieces here in white, and this is going to give us some different parts here for the head, with a little bit different shape there in the head, and also these are going to set the chest parts out to be a little bit more pronounced, and so the chest won't be quite as flat. As for the two sets for the 100 scale and 144 scale Gundam Aerial, I believe these are going to do similar things in that they're going to extend the proportions of the legs and also extend the proportions in the torso. Now let me just check here, because this is the Full Mechanics version, and as you can see, we have a new piece here in white for in the stomach section, which I believe would be a little bit longer to accommodate for the extended proportions in the torso, and you can see some of those parts here on this runner, but we do also have some alternative parts that we're going to use for the feet. So this is basically telling you, according to the manual, what would be parts D3 and D6. We're going to swap part D3 for part 4, swap part D6 for part 11 here from these runners. And you can see these parts are just labeled with numbers here on the runner, so pretty simple and straightforward. So there'll be a couple of parts that we're going to swap there in the feet, and then mostly parts here in the torso. And then yeah, for the HG here, we're just going to have this one single runner of some parts here in gray, and this is going to also just extend the torso, make the torso a bit more lengthened, and then also the lower legs as well, make the lower legs a bit longer. So let me go ahead and put these together with their respective kits, and we'll see how they work out. So let's start off by taking a look at the Zeta Gundam here now with the new parts installed. Now, how I want to discuss this basically comes down to three main points. Number one, objectively, how does this change the look of the kit? Number two, how difficult was it to change the parts out? Because like if you already have the kit, you already have it assembled, and you need to disassemble the kit in order to put the new parts in. I want to talk about how difficult or easy that process is for each of these sets. And then the third and final point, which is completely subjective, is does it improve the look of the kit, which I'm just going to give you guys my opinion, and you may agree or disagree on that one. But here for the Zeta Gundam, in terms of the first point as to how it changes the look of the Gundam, we have those new parts for the white armor on the head, which as far as I can tell really only changes the kind of length of the face, makes the face a bit shorter, not quite so long and slim. And so there's not really a huge change there. It's certainly noticeable if you see them side by side, but if you were just looking at this and if you didn't know that it had the different parts on there, if you're not like a super fan, you might not notice that difference. And then the other difference is going to be here in the chest, which the new parts make it so that the chest is more prominent, sticks out a bit. It's not quite so flat. That one, again, it's a very small difference. I definitely wouldn't have minded if it would have been a little bit more. And I suppose you could maybe stick that out a bit more, then it's kind of like not where it's supposed to be. It's not like solid in place. But so essentially the changes here for the Zeta Gundam are going to be very minimal in terms of what's different. The chest is a bit more pronounced, the face is a bit shorter in length, and that's about it. As for how difficult this was to disassemble to put the new parts in, I would say this is definitely the most difficult of the three, just because of this being a master grade, so it's going to be the most complex kit, but it's also a transforming master grade. So there was basically, to put the new parts into the chest and into the head, I almost had to completely disassemble the entire chest and head parts of this kit. So there was a lot of disassembly required. Wasn't that bad. I mean, you just basically follow the manual. You just go through the manual process in reverse for the construction of the torso and the head. And so you know, it took a little bit of time, but it wasn't that bad. Ultimately then, for my opinion on this one, is it really worth it or not? I would say it definitely is an improvement, but it's a very, very slight improvement. I would say the best bet would be is if you have this kit and you haven't built it yet, or if you are planning to get this kit and you haven't built it yet. Then if you would like to also get these alternate proportions to the face and to the chest, then I would say definitely check out this option set. I think it looks better in my opinion, but if you have to disassemble the kit in order to put them in, you may not find it worthwhile or not. It's kind of up to you. But if you've not built the kit, then I would definitely recommend picking up this option parts set with this, and then just use those alternative parts from your initial construction, from your initial buildup of the kit. I think it's an improvement to the look, albeit very slight. As for the aerial kits, it's definitely a bit more interesting, the changes that we get. Now, starting off here with the full mechanics aerial, there's going to be a couple of significant changes that will definitely make a difference depending on what you want your kit to do. Now, for me personally, these aren't like the changes that I really care too much about, but the most significant change is going to be replacing this middle section of the torso, and so you are going to basically have to completely disassemble the torso in order to swap this part out. But what this is going to do is take our original piece, which of course doesn't have an opening cockpit because this is of course not a master grade kit, but now we have an actual opening cockpit part here. If we move this part down, it's going to be kind of hard to see in there, but there is an actual cockpit. Now, no pilot figure still included with this, unfortunately, but you do have an open cockpit in there. So if that is something that you wanted to recreate with your model kit, you're now able to do this with this part, and it's a very small change to the part, and it's a kind of a shame that Bandai couldn't have done that originally. There's also a slight difference if you look around here on the back side of that part. On the back of Bandai's original part, you can see that center kind of like spinal detail is slightly differently shaped. And the reason for that is that here on the new part, which is also a different color from the rest of the frame, by the way, I don't know why they wouldn't have just molded this in the same color. It's not super obvious, but if that is something you care about, unfortunately it's not in the right color. But anyway, when you bend the torso forward, those parts separate like that, which does look pretty cool. It moves in a similar way as the parts around here for the knee, how those parts separate there like that. Now, when you bend the torso, we have a really nice ab crunch there and a nice separation of those parts. It's a cool little detail. Otherwise, I wouldn't necessarily say that it adds too much to the overall articulation. I will say I think the articulation is maybe slightly improved. You still have a really nice ab crunch, nice movement here side to side. The original part did have that, but I think it is a little bit improved with this version. And the other improvement is going to be down here at the feet. We have a new part here for the ankle connection, which is very, very slightly taller, so we have a little bit more length in the lower leg section. Really slight. I think it's like 1 or 2 millimeters. But then we also have a different part here for the foot, which actually makes the front part of the foot a little bit lower as well. So if you notice, it looks like the foot's maybe like a bit taller, a bit more sort of like this like high-heeled sort of look, and that's just from the front of the toe base, the front part of the foot just basically being lowered down slightly. And so that might make it a little bit more tricky to make the kit stand up because the front and the back may not line up exactly right. You kind of have to mess with it a little bit to kind of get the angle right. But especially if you're planning on having this kit up on an action base and elevated, then it's not really going to make any difference for you. And it's also really only going to just make the foot maybe look slightly longer, but again, it's going to be a very slight difference. So yeah, in terms of how difficult it was to swap out the parts, like I said, I basically had to completely disassemble the torso, which was not bad. And then for the lower leg and the feet here, I had to disassemble the foot a bunch there, the front part, but it's only a couple of pieces. In order to swap out that part there for the ankle connection, I basically just had to pry these pieces apart a little bit here for the lower leg, and then I was able to get that piece out without completely disassembling the leg at all. So really wasn't too bad. And as for my opinion on how worthwhile this is, just going back to what I said a few minutes ago, basically it just comes down to what you want the kit to do. As far as the parts here in the ankle and the feet, not really that big of a difference, to be honest. I don't know if I could really say that it's really worthwhile one way or the other or not. It's a slight difference. It's maybe an improvement, I guess, because who doesn't like a little bit longer legs? Here in the torso, while the articulation is slightly improved, that's a good thing. Whether you want the cockpit to actually open or not, that's completely up to you. For me, it's not really something that I really care about unless I had like a specific plan for a making the build in some way to have that open. It's not something that I would normally care about, so I don't think that it's something that's too important for me personally, but if that's something that you like your kits to be able to do, if you like the cockpit to be able to be opened up, then this is certainly something that's going to allow you to do that. So if you have this kit already and you want to get these parts, I would say definitely go for it. It's not that difficult to disassemble the torso and swap those parts out. It's just going to take you a couple of minutes. But again, if you've not gotten the kit yet, or if you have the kit and you've just not built it yet, is this part set worth getting? Yeah, definitely. If you want to be able to open the cockpit, then sure. Now, as for the HG Aerial, here's where we're going to see definitely the most significant changes outwardly that you can tell. Now, obviously, it's going to be really a different look there in the torso, with the torso having this very almost Iron Blood Orphan style, very thin mechanical looking waist there, with the added point of articulation and just added height, which is going to be very noticeable. But then you'll also notice a lot of added height there just above the ankle as well, so the lower part of the leg is extended quite a bit farther down. It's going to be basically those gray parts, which are the center part of the lower leg, are much longer now with these new parts there in the leg. And so as you can imagine, the joint that we have added here on the torso is going to give you quite a bit more ab crunch there, pretty extreme amount of ab crunch. We still have the same articulation of having a little bit side to side bend there as well, and then your typical rotation, but we're getting a lot more ab crunch there with that new joint, and then just an extension of these lower legs there with that gray part, like I said, going down to the ankle. We also have added movement here of the toe being able to point very far down. We have that, which is more than it was before too, so you can point the toe like really far down. And so obviously with this being an HG, it is going to be the simplest when it comes to having to deconstruct the kit in order to reconstruct it with the new parts. I had to basically take apart a few parts of the torso, not entirely though, but you had to take it like almost entirely, I guess, there for the torso, which is not too bad again with it being an HG. And then for the lower leg, basically have to disassemble everything from the knee down in order to swap out those parts for the inside of the calves, and then have to almost completely disassemble the feet as well. So there is a fair amount of deconstruction required in order to put in these parts, but again, with it being an HG, it's the part count is relatively small. It's relatively straightforward. And again, a perfect example of why I recommend you guys to have a part separator tool. It's like I always say, it's one of those tools that seems silly in theory, but in practice, it's super useful. I use this all the time, and especially for projects like this, where you have to take apart kits that you've already put together, take apart different parts and sections. Having a part separator is very handy to have. So last point on the HG Aerial, just what are my personal thoughts on it. I definitely like the extension of the lower legs. That looks pretty good. And the additional movement there that you're able to get for the front of the foot is also nice for doing aerial poses, pun intended. But as for the midsection, can't say that I'm a big fan of the design of this part here. Definitely an extension to the waist, I think is nice in terms of just as an improvement to the proportions. But I think this is a little bit much, and I'm just not really too big a fan of the shape of that, but it definitely, I think, will look good in action, so in posing the kits. Let's actually just wrap up the review here, taking a look at these kits in a couple of different poses, just to basically see how they're going to look in action. And so ultimately with these sets, I think they do alter the kits in an interesting way, and in theory, I really like the idea of part sets like this that will basically, it's not like a full new inner frame or a full new set of armor, but just a couple of parts that just change a few of maybe like the, I don't want to say problem areas, but parts of the kits that, I don't know, are pretty commonly maybe disliked, or maybe people have a lot of mixed opinions about the certain proportions of a certain design. So just like a handful of parts like this that just change the proportions a little bit, maybe improve the articulation a little bit. In the case of the full mechanics aerial, adding an opening cockpit, it's a really good idea and concept. So I really like the idea of these part sets, and I hope to see some more in the future. And especially at a cheap price point, because the thing is, again, they're really only going to make a really small difference. So it's not something that I think most people are going to want to pay, too much money for. But if it's just a few dollars, if you're planning on getting the kit, and if it's just going to cost you a few extra dollars to have a couple of more parts which will basically improve the kit, even if it's a slight amount. I think that's definitely something that is interesting. It's very cool. Let me know your guys' thoughts on these 3 sets that we took a look at today, and maybe leave a comment and let me know what you would like to see in the future for some more sets like this. If there's a particular kit that you think could benefit from, you know, like I said, again, a little bit different proportions or a little bit better articulation, that you think maybe just a handful of parts could make that difference. Let me know your guys' ideas in the comment section. I'm just kind of interested to know what you guys might come up with as possible ideas for some additional part sets in the future. But for now, guys, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys want to check out these part sets for yourself, you can check them out at the link in the video description below to USA Gundam Store. And before you guys go, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, making sure that you're subscribed, I really appreciate all of your support. Thank you so much. And until next time, hope you guys all have a great day. I'll see y'all later. Bye, guys.